The hum of the Zalaran prisoner transport vibrated through Jack Hughes' restraints. The alien cuffs were cold, digging into his wrists with unyielding precision, designed for creatures far less resilient than him. Jack kept his expression neutral, his sharp green eyes scanning every detail of his surroundings. For now, he was the unassuming prisoner, a role he had mastered long before his stint in Earth's military. Across from him, Commander Vralik loomed, his chitinous armor glinting under the transport's sterile lights. Vralik's elongated face, marked by deep ridges and faint bioluminescence, twisted into a sneer. You humans never learn. Resistance only prolongs the inevitable. His voice was a guttural rasp, each word weighted with contempt. Jack didn't respond. Silence was his first weapon, one that unnerved even the most seasoned interrogators. He shifted slightly, testing the bindings under the guise of discomfort. The Zalaran cuffs were advanced, certainly, but they weren't perfect. He filed away the observation. The transport shuddered as it docked in the Zalaran detention facility. The airlock hissed open, releasing a gust of sterile, cold air. Jack was marched through the corridors by two hulking guards, their exoskeletal bodies clinking with each step. The facility was a labyrinth of pulsating blue lights and humming energy barriers, clearly designed to intimidate. Jack noted the positions of cameras, the routines of the guards, and the faint vibrations beneath his feet. Likely the reactor core. They finally stopped in a sterile interrogation chamber. A single chair bolted to the floor waited for him in the center of the room. Jack was shoved into the seat, his restraints clamped to the armrests. Vralik stepped forward, his towering frame casting a long shadow. "You'll tell me what I want to know," Vralik hissed, leaning close. "Your military operations, your tactical weak points, humanity's desperate little plans to resist our supremacy." Jack tilted his head, his expression blank. "I'll save you some time. We don't negotiate with overgrown insects." Vralik's mandibles clicked in irritation. He backhanded Jack across the face with a sharp, armored claw, the blow drawing a thin line of blood. Jack barely flinched. Instead, he stared directly into Vralik's luminescent eyes, a flicker of something dark and unyielding in his gaze. "You have spirit," Vralik admitted, pacing around him. "But spirit is no match for inevitability. Your kind will fall, as countless others have before you. The Confederacy's strength is unmatched." Jack smirked faintly, his voice low. "Is that what you tell yourselves to sleep at night?" Vralik straightened, the glow in his eyes intensifying. "You'll regret those words." He gestured sharply, and the guards dragged Jack away, deeper into the facility. The cell they threw him into was a featureless, gray chamber, illuminated by the faint hum of an energy barrier sealing the entrance. Jack sat on the cold floor, leaning against the wall as he surveyed the room. No cameras, only motion sensors in the corners. He flexed his wrists subtly, testing the strength of the restraints still holding him. The cuffs would take time, but not much. As he worked, Jack's thoughts drifted to the life that had brought him here. Before enlisting, he had been a shadow in the underworld, a professional hitman whose name was spoken in whispers. His targets never saw him coming. His plans were meticulous, his strikes ruthless. The military had given him legitimacy, but it hadn't dulled his edge. If anything, it had sharpened his skills further. The sound of footsteps outside his cell snapped him back to the present. Two guards stood just beyond the barrier, speaking in their guttural tongue. Jack didn't need to understand their words. Their body language spoke volumes. They weren't worried about him. They thought he was harmless. Mistake number one. The minutes stretched into hours. Jack remained still, his breathing controlled, his mind calculating. Patience was his second weapon. He watched the guards change shifts, noting their patterns, their interactions. The way one of them always hesitated slightly before activating the barrier controls. Every detail was ammunition. By the time Vralik returned, Jack had a plan. The alien commander strode into the cell with the same arrogant confidence he displayed before, flanked by a pair of guards. "Are you ready to talk, human?" Vralik asked, his tone mocking. Jack's lips curled into a faint smile, his first real expression since his capture. You seem pretty sure of yourself, Commander. Vralik paused, his mandibles twitching. And why shouldn't I be? You're outmatched, outnumbered, and at our mercy. Jack leaned forward slightly, his gaze piercing. Because you have no idea who you've locked up. The sudden change in his demeanor gave Vralik pause. For the first time, doubt flickered across the alien's face. It was fleeting, but Jack caught it. He leaned back, his smirk widening. The moment was small, but it was enough. Jack knew he had planted the seed of uncertainty. Now, all he had to do was wait for it to grow. The energy barrier hummed back to life as Vralik left the cell, his mandibles clicking in irritation. Jack settled back against the wall, his fingers still working the cuffs. Freedom was a matter of time, and time was a resource he knew how to exploit. For now, he was still the unassuming prisoner. But soon, they would realize the mistake they had made. By then, it would be too late. The cell was silent save for the faint hum of the energy barrier. Jack Hughes sat cross-legged on the cold floor, his head tilted slightly as if in thought. In truth, his mind worked faster than the Zalaran algorithms monitoring his vitals. Every breath, every motion of the guards outside, every shift in the building's vibrations was another piece of the puzzle he was assembling. His fingers brushed over the edge of his cuffs, subtly feeling for the weak points. These restraints weren't designed for humans, especially not ones trained to turn the smallest flaw into an opportunity. A faint pop signaled his success. Jack's cuffs loosened, but he didn't remove them. Not yet. Timing was everything. The two guards stationed outside his cell were Zalaran brutes, their thick exoskeletons giving them an air of invincibility. They spoke in their guttural language, occasionally glancing toward the barrier. Jack couldn't understand their words, but he didn't need to. Body language was universal. And these two were overconfident and distracted. Mistake number 2. Jack rose, rolling his shoulders as though stretching after hours of inactivity. He stepped toward the energy barrier, his hands still appearing bound. The guard stiffened but didn't move. "Hey," Jack said, his tone casual. "I think your commander's going to want to hear what I have to say." The taller guard's mandibles twitched, a sign of irritation. "Silence, human." Jack smirked, leaning closer. "What's the matter? Afraid I might actually know something useful." The second guard, shorter but stockier, stepped forward and deactivated the energy barrier. "Speak, or you will regret it." Jack moved swiftly. Before the guard could react, Jack lashed out with a precise kick to the alien's knee joint, exploiting the gap in its exoskeleton. The guard crumpled with a guttural cry. In the same motion, Jack pivoted and drove his elbow into the taller guard's throat, silencing him before he could raise the alarm. Jack stood over the fallen aliens, exhaling slowly. Their weapons, a sleek plasma rifle and an electrified blade, were quickly confiscated. The blade felt foreign in his hand, but the rifle was straightforward enough. Jack slung it over his shoulder, his movements fluid and deliberate. Mistake number 3. They thought he was just a soldier. The corridors were dimly lit, pulsating with the faint blue glow of alien tech. Jack moved like a shadow, his years of experience as a hitman guiding him through the maze-like facility. Every turn was calculated, every step measured to avoid detection. The guards patrolling the halls were methodical but predictable. Another flaw he exploited. Reaching an observation deck overlooking the prison's central hub, Jack crouched behind a console. The hub was a sprawling room filled with guards, technicians, and surveillance equipment. At its center was the facility's power core, a pulsating sphere of energy encased in layers of translucent shielding. It was heavily guarded, but Jack didn't need to disable it. Not yet. Instead, his eyes scanned the room until they landed on a terminal near the far wall. From his vantage point, he couldn't see the terminal's exact function, but he didn't need to. If his earlier observations were correct, it would grant him access to the facility's security systems. The challenge was getting there unnoticed. 2 guards stood near the terminal, their posture rigid, their attention focused on the bustling activity in the room. Jack calculated the timing of their movements and the blind spots in the surveillance cameras. He waited, his breathing steady, until the moment presented itself. In a fluid motion, he dropped down from the observation deck, landing silently behind a stack of crates. The guards didn't notice. Jack moved quickly, darting between cover points until he was within striking distance. The blade came first, silent and deadly as Jack drove it into the gap in the first guard's armor. Before the second could react, Jack twisted the fallen guard's rifle from his hands and fired a single, precise shot. The alien crumpled, the faint whine of the plasma rifle fading into the background noise of the hub. Jack reached the terminal and plugged in the small data spike he had concealed during his capture. A human-designed device, it quickly bypassed the Zalaran encryption protocols, granting him access to the facility's systems. The terminal screen flickered, and Jack's lips curled into a faint smile as he began shutting down key systems. Alarms blared throughout the facility as energy barriers deactivated and security doors locked or opened unpredictably. Chaos erupted in the hub as guards scrambled to respond. Jack used the confusion to slip away, his route already planned. The corridors ahead were in disarray, with prisoners escaping and guards shouting orders. Jack moved with purpose, avoiding the larger confrontations while picking off isolated guards with ruthless efficiency. Every kill was calculated, every move designed to maximize impact and minimize delay. By the time he reached the docking bay, the facility was in full lockdown. The bay was a sprawling chamber filled with alien shuttles and patrolling guards. Jack crouched behind a cargo crate, observing their movements. One shuttle stood out, a sleek, black vessel that was smaller and faster than the others. Likely Vrolic's personal transport, it would be heavily secured. But Jack wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. He watched as a patrol of 3 guards passed by his position, their weapons at the ready. Timing his movements, Jack emerged from cover, dispatching the first guard with a knife to the throat. The second turned, only to be silenced by a precise shot from the plasma rifle. The third stumbled backward, firing wildly, but Jack's shot found its mark before the alien could sound the alarm. With the path clear, Jack sprinted to the shuttle, using the stolen blade to cut through the locking mechanism. The hatch hissed open, and he slipped inside. The controls were alien, but Jack's time in the military had exposed him to enough Zalaran tech to recognize the basics. The docking bay doors began to close as the alarm systems redirected resources. Jack powered up the shuttle, its engines humming to life. With a flick of a lever, the craft surged forward, narrowly escaping as the doors slammed shut behind him. As he broke through the atmosphere, Jack leaned back in the pilot's chair, his expression calm but his eyes alight with determination. The escape was only the beginning. Above the planet, the vastness of space stretched out before him, dotted with distant stars and the looming silhouette of the Zalaran fleet. Jack smirked. The Confederacy had no idea what they had unleashed, but they would learn. The chase was far from over. The black shuttle glided silently through the void, its cloaking systems engaged to evade detection. Jack Hughes sat in the cockpit, his focus sharp as he monitored the Zalaran fleet looming in the distance. The alien vessels were massive, their sleek forms bristling with weaponry. He had no illusions about the odds. But Jack wasn't here for a fair fight. The console in front of him beeped softly, displaying a detailed schematic of the fleet. The central flagship, or Araxis, was a behemoth, dwarfing the other vessels. It was the command hub for the Zalaran operations in this sector, and the heart of their strategy to crush humanity's resistance. Jack's target was clear. A faint smile crossed his face. They would never see him coming. As he approached the outer perimeter of the fleet, Jack activated the shuttle's hacking suite, a relic of Earth's Black Ops programs. The device worked quickly, inserting a false transponder signal that identified his shuttle as an authorized Zalaran craft. The deception would hold, but only for a limited time. Jack adjusted the controls, weaving his way between patrol routes and automated defenses. Every movement was calculated, every risk weighed against the potential reward. His mind was a razor, slicing through the chaos with precision. The shuttle docked smoothly within the flagship's cavernous hangar. The interior was bustling with activity. Alien engineers tending to sleek fighters, guards patrolling the area with disciplined efficiency. Jack stayed hidden in the shadows, his stolen blade and plasma rifle at the ready. He waited for the perfect moment, watching as a group of engineers moved a fuel pod across the hangar. When the guards' attention shifted, Jack slipped out of the shuttle, blending into the chaos. His military training, honed by years of covert missions, made him a ghost in the enemy's stronghold. Jack's first objective was clear: disable the ship's security grid. Without it, he would be swarmed before he could complete his mission. The schematic he had stolen earlier guided him through the maze of corridors, avoiding patrols and surveillance. Reaching the security hub, Jack crouched behind a stack of crates, observing the room. A group of Zalaran technicians manned the consoles, their focus split between monitoring internal systems and coordinating fleet operations. 2 guards stood at attention by the entrance, their weapons ready. Jack moved swiftly, his blade flashing in the dim light as he eliminated the guards before they could react. The technicians barely had time to look up before he dispatched them with a series of precise shots from the plasma rifle. At the main console, Jack inserted his data spike, overriding the flagship security systems. Energy barriers throughout the ship flickered and died. Doors unlocked at random, and the automated defenses went offline. Chaos erupted as the Zalaran crew scrambled to regain control. Satisfied, Jack withdrew the spike and slipped back into the corridors. His next objective awaited him deeper within the ship. The command deck of Auraxis was a fortress, heavily guarded and fortified with advanced defenses. Jack approached with caution, using the confusion he had created to his advantage. The guards were distracted, their movements frantic as they tried to restore order. Jack struck with ruthless efficiency, eliminating the sentries one by one as he closed in on the deck. When he reached the final barrier, he set a small explosive charge, stepping back as the blast tore through the reinforced door. Smoke and fire filled the air as Jack stepped onto the command deck, his rifle raised. The Zalaran officers turned in shock, their mandibles clicking in alarm. At the center of the room stood Commander Vralik, his bioluminescent eyes narrowing as he recognized Jack. "You," Vralik hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. "You dare invade my ship?" Jack leveled his rifle at the commander, his expression cold. "I told you, you didn't know who you'd locked up. Now you do." Vralik snarled, drawing a serrated blade from his belt. "You think you can challenge me, human? You're nothing but a primitive savage." Jack didn't respond. He fired a burst from the plasma rifle, forcing Vralik to dive for cover. The remaining officers scrambled to defend their commander, but Jack moved like a predator, picking them off with relentless precision. Vralik emerged from cover, charging at Jack with his blade raised. Jack sidestepped the attack, his own stolen blade flashing as he slashed across the commander's arm. Vralik roared in pain, but the alien's movements were quick and powerful. The two clashed in a brutal melee, their weapons sparking as they struck and parried. Jack's training and experience gave him the edge. He anticipated Vralik's strikes, exploiting the alien's overconfidence and lack of finesse. With a final, decisive move, Jack drove his blade into Vralik's chest, the alien's bioluminescent eyes dimming as he collapsed. The command deck fell silent. Jack stood over the fallen commander, his breathing steady despite the exertion. He turned to the main console, inputting the commands to overload the flagship's reactor. Alarms blared once more, but this time there would be no recovery. Jack made his way back to the hangar, his movements swift but controlled. The Zalaran crew was in disarray, their chain of command shattered and their systems failing. He reached the shuttle and powered it up, the engines roaring to life as he launched into space. Behind him, the Auraxis erupted in a blinding explosion, the shockwave tearing through nearby vessels. Jack maneuvered through the chaos, his eyes fixed on the distant stars. As he left the Zolarian fleet in ruins, Jack allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. His escape had been a warning, his retribution had been a statement, and his mission was far from over. The shuttle drifted through the void, its systems barely holding together after the chaos Jack had unleashed. The cockpit was dim, lit only by the flickering glow of the control panels. Jack Hughes sat in the pilot's seat, his face a stoic mask as he navigated away from the wreckage of the Zolarian fleet. Behind him, the remnants of Oraxis were still visible, glittering fragments scattered across the black canvas of space. The flagship's destruction had left the Zolarian forces in disarray. Without their commander and central hub of operations, their campaign against humanity would falter. But Jack knew better than to revel in temporary victories. His eyes flicked to a flashing alert on the console. The shuttle's power reserves were critically low, and its hull integrity was compromised. Escape had come at a cost. He set a course for a nearby asteroid field, hoping to find a secluded spot to regroup and assess his next move. The asteroid field was dense, a labyrinth of spinning rocks illuminated by the faint light of a distant star. Jack guided the shuttle into a hollowed-out asteroid, its natural cavern providing a makeshift refuge. As the engines powered down, the eerie silence of space settled over him. Jack exhaled and leaned back, his muscles aching from the battle. His hands were steady, but the adrenaline that had carried him through the assault was fading, leaving only the cold reality of what lay ahead. He reached into a compartment beneath the console, retrieving a compact medkit. Methodically, he treated the shallow cuts and bruises that adorned his arms, the pain a reminder of how close he had come to failure. The Zolarians wouldn't let this slide. Jack knew their retaliation would be swift and merciless. The destruction of their flagship and the death of Commander Vralik would enrage the Confederacy, spurring them to redouble their efforts against humanity. He hadn't stopped the war. He had merely shifted its course. As he worked, his mind drifted to the faces of those he had lost, comrades from his military days, friends who had fought alongside him during the darkest hours of humanity's struggle, and his brother. Jack's jaw tightened at the memory of the Zolarian raid that had taken everything from him. They hadn't just killed his brother. They had made it personal, sending a brutal message to Earth. That message had shaped Jack into the weapon he had become. The console beeped softly, pulling him from his thoughts. A proximity alert. Jack's hand darted to the plasma rifle at his side as he scanned the readout. A small ship was approaching, its design unmistakably human. Jack relaxed slightly, but remained wary. He stepped to the shuttle's hatch, plasma rifle at the ready as the human vessel docked. The hiss of decompression filled the air as the hatch opened, revealing a man clad in a black flight suit. His weathered face and piercing gaze marked him as someone familiar with danger. "Jack Hughes," the man said, his voice low but firm. "You've made quite the mess." Jack lowered the rifle but kept his grip firm. "You're welcome. Who are you?" "Commander Rourke," the man replied. "Earth Defense Command. We've been monitoring your activities." Jack smirked. "Is that what we're calling it now? Monitoring?" Rourke stepped forward, his expression unyielding. "The Zolarians are in chaos, but they won't stay that way for long. What you've done is going to escalate this war." Jack crossed his arms, his gaze cold. "Good. They need to know we're not going to lie down and take it." Rourke studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Look, I get it. You've been through hell. We all have. But this isn't just about revenge. If we're going to survive, we need to be smarter than them." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Smarter, huh? And what's your plan?" "Sit back and hope they show mercy." Rourke shook his head. "No, but we can't afford to have loose cannons making decisions on their own. You're dangerous, Hughes, but you're also effective. The question is whether you can follow orders." Jack considered the man's words, the weight of his past choices pressing against him. He had always worked alone, trusting no one but himself. But the war was bigger than him, bigger than his thirst for vengeance. "What are you offering?" Jack asked, his tone cautious. Rourke's expression softened slightly. "A chance to fight with us. To use your skills where they'll make the most impact. We're building a resistance, a force capable of turning the tide. We need someone like you." Jack looked past Rourke, his gaze drifting to the human ship docked alongside his shuttle. It was sleek and battle-worn, a testament to humanity's resilience. He thought of the countless lives at stake, the people back on Earth depending on someone to take the fight to the enemy. Finally, he nodded. "I'll listen. But if you think I'm going to play nice with bureaucrats and politicians, you're mistaken." Rourke chuckled, a rare glimmer of humor in his stern demeanor. "I wouldn't expect anything less. Now let's get moving. We've got work to do." Jack followed Rourke onto the human ship, his steps measured but purposeful. The hatch sealed behind him, and the vessel's engines roared to life, carrying them away from the asteroid field. As the stars stretched out before him, Jack felt a flicker of something he hadn't allowed himself in years. Hope. The war was far from over, but for the first time, he wasn't fighting alone. And for the Zolarans, that would prove to be their greatest mistake.